My father loved two things in life, racehorses and my brother. I was never on that list. When his prized horse, Emperor, needed an expensive treatment, he used my college fund to pay for it, telling me that a champion horse was a better investment than an average son. 20 years later, he showed up at my stables, the ones I built from nothing. He was broke, defeated, and asked me to save the family legacy. The irony was as delicious as it was bitter. My name is Artur, and I grew up in a world of hay, leather, and the constant shadow of my older brother, Ricardo. Our family owned Alvarado Stables, a respected name in the world of horse racing. But the stables weren't a family, they were a kingdom. And my father, a stern man obsessed with pedigrees, was the king. Ricardo was his crown prince. From an early age, Ricardo had the touch. He understood the horses, had the posture, the confidence. My father idolized him, seeing in him the continuation of his legacy. I, on the other hand, was different. I loved the horses, but not for the glory of the racetrack. I loved them for their beauty, for their intelligence. I preferred to spend hours in the stalls, caring for the sick animals, than on the training track. To my father, this was a sign of weakness. Horses are athletes, Artur, not pets, he would say. You're too sentimental. You don't have the fiber of a champion, like your brother. Favoritism was the law of our house. Ricardo's victories on the track were celebrated with expensive dinners. My perfect report cards were met with a nod. He got his first racehorse at 16. I got a book on equine anatomy. The dynamic crystallized around one horse in particular, Emperor. He was a magnificent thoroughbred, my father's greatest bet, the horse that would carry the Alvarado name to national glory. And the designated jockey and trainer, of course, was Ricardo. Everything revolved around Emperor. The best feed, the best veterinarians, my father's constant attention. My mother and I became secondary figures in the drama of a horse's rise. I was 18 and had been saving money for years, working at the stables. My parents had promised to match my savings so I could attend veterinary school, my dream. I was 1 month away from enrolling. That's when the disaster happened. Emperor suffered a severe tendon injury during a training session. The prognosis was grim. The veterinarian said his racing career was likely over. My father refused to accept it. He found a specialist in Europe who proposed an experimental surgery, extremely risky and astronomically expensive. A surgery that cost, coincidentally, the exact amount that was saved for my college education. The conversation took place in my father's office, the air thick with the smell of leather and disappointment. I need the money, Artur, he said, without beating around the bush. Your college money. The floor fell out from under me. Dad, but, what about my studies? It's my future. His response was the sentence that defined me for years. He looked at me with his cold eyes and said, a champion horse with Emperor's bloodline is an investment. Your college degree is an uncertain bet. Right now, I need to bet on the winner. That night, he transferred the money. He didn't trade me for my brother. He traded me for a horse. That act of betrayal was my liberation. I realized that I would never have my father's approval, no matter what I did. He didn't value me, he valued trophies, and I would never be one for him. The following week, I packed a small bag, took what little money I had left, and left home. I left a note for my mother, telling her I loved her, but that I needed to find my own way. I received no call from my father. Ricardo sent me a single text, "You're selfish. Abandoning the family in a time of crisis." The irony was so thick it suffocated me. I went to the other side of the country. I used my knowledge of horses to get a job as a stable hand at a small ranch. The work was hard, the pay low, but for the first time in my life, I was free. Free from the comparisons, the disapproval, the shadow of Emperor. The years that followed were a slow and difficult climb. I saved every penny. I studied at night, not veterinary medicine, but agribusiness management. I learned about breeding, about genetics, not for the racetrack, but for endurance and health. My philosophy was different from my father's. I didn't want to create fast, fragile race winners. I wanted to breed strong, healthy horses with good temperaments. With a small loan and the help of the ranch owner, who became my mentor, I bought my first mare. And so, Resilient Stables was born. It was the opposite of Alvarado. It was small, functional, with no frills. But my horses were magnificent. I built a reputation in the breeding world for producing animals with impeccable health and remarkable intelligence. My business grew. With every horse I sold, I reinvested everything back into Resilience. I never spoke to my father again. My mother would call me from time to time, the conversations always superficial, avoiding the elephant in the room. I learned through her that Emperor's surgery had failed. The horse never raced again and was sold for a fraction of his value. Alvarado Stables, which had bet everything on a single animal, began a slow decline. Ricardo, without a champion horse to carry his career, proved to be a terrible manager. They started selling off land to cover debts. 20 years passed. I, at 40, had become one of the most respected breeders in the country. Resilient Stables was a name synonymous with quality. I was married, had 2 children, a full life that I had built from scratch. Alvarado Stables, I heard through third parties, was on the brink of total bankruptcy. I felt nothing. Not joy, not sadness. It was just the logical consequence of my father's choices. And then, he appeared. I was in my office, looking out at the green pastures of Resilience, when an old, rusty pickup truck pulled up to the entrance. An older man, hunched and with a face marked by time, got out. It took me a second to recognize my father. He walked slowly to the porch of my office, hat in hand, looking like a stranger on my land. He looked around, at the well-kept stables, at the healthy horses grazing, and I saw a mixture of admiration and bitterness in his eyes. "Artur," he said, his voice hoarse. "You've built a beautiful place here." "Thank you," I replied, without standing up, without inviting him in. "What brings you here after 20 years?" He didn't try to feign remorse. My father was too direct for that. He got straight to the point. "Alvarado is finished," he said. "The banks are going to take everything next week. Ricardo, he made some bad deals. He lost his way." He looked at me, and for the first time, I saw not a king, but a desperate man. "I came to ask for your help. Not for me. For the family name. For your grandfather's legacy." I let him speak. He proposed a merger. I was to buy Alvarado, assume its debts, and unite our stables. Ricardo, he suggested, could work for me, as a marketing manager. "He has the name, the charisma," my father insisted, still blind. "And you have the talent for breeding. Together, you can raise the Alvarado name again." The proposal was so delusional, so disconnected from the reality of 2 decades of abandonment, that I almost laughed. He didn't come to ask for forgiveness. He came to offer me a partnership with the same son he had chosen over me, to save the same legacy he had denied me. He didn't see the irony. He only saw a business solution. "Let me get this straight," I said, finally standing up and walking to the door. "You used my future to gamble on a horse. The gamble failed. You and your prodigy son ran your legacy into the ground. And now, you show up here and offer me the chance to clean up your mess, to save your name, and to give my brother a job. Is that it?" He recoiled slightly at the harshness of my voice. "It's more complicated than that, Artur. This is about family." "No," I corrected him. "It's not. Family was a choice you made 20 years ago, in your office. And you didn't choose me. You chose a horse. And then you chose Ricardo. Your choices, your consequences." I pointed to the wooden sign at the entrance of my stables. This is my legacy. It's called resilience for a reason. I built it myself, not with your money or your name. And it's not for sale. And it's certainly not available for a merger. He looked at me, desperation turning to anger. You're ungrateful. After everything Everything you what? I interrupted. All you did was show me that I wasn't good enough. And in a twisted way, I should thank you. Your rejection was the best thing that ever happened to me. It gave me the freedom to become who I am, far from your shadow. I opened the office door. This conversation is over, Dad. I'm not going to help you. Alvarado Stables and its problems are yours to solve. He stood there for a moment, his face a mask of fury and defeat. You'll regret this, he said through clenched teeth. You're turning your back on your own blood. No, I replied, looking him in the eyes. I'm just following your example. He turned and walked away, limping back to his old pickup truck, the deposed king of a ruined kingdom. When he left, I didn't feel triumph. I felt a deep emptiness. That confrontation didn't bring the closure I expected. It just confirmed the insurmountable distance between us. The following week, Alvarado Stables went to auction. I didn't go. But I heard it was sold for a pittance to an investment consortium that planned to turn it into a luxury condominium complex. The name Alvarado disappeared. A few days later, I received a call. It was Ricardo. I know I have no right, he began, his voice surprisingly humble. But I had to call. To apologize. For everything. He told me how the bankruptcy and humiliation had finally made him see reality. How he had spent his whole life trying to be the person our father wanted him to be, and in the process, had lost himself. He admitted that he had always been jealous of me, not of my success, but of my freedom to be who I was. It was a strange and uncomfortable conversation. He asked if there was any chance in the future. I cut him off. I forgive you, Ricardo, I said, and was surprised by the sincerity of my own words. But our time as brothers is over. I wish you the best. Goodbye. And I hung up. I don't know what happened to them. I heard my father moved into a small apartment in the city, a bitter man living off his memories. Ricardo, from what I've been told, got an honest job in another field, trying to rebuild his life from scratch. I never sought them out again, and they never sought me out. Sometimes, when I ride through the pastures of resilience at sunset, I think of Emperor, the horse I was traded for. His career was short and his fall, swift. My journey was the opposite. Slow, difficult, but built on a solid foundation. My father bet on the wrong horse. He bet on speed instead of stamina, on flash instead of substance. And in the end, the lesson that the horse world always teaches, and that he never learned, is that the longest races aren't won by the fastest, but by the most resilient. And ultimately, I endured. And that, for me, is the only victory that matters.